All right, now we're live. So I decided to name the title of this hangout Stepping Out of Young Earth Creationism. And I did say I have a very special guest, but instead of giving the introductions, I'll let him introduce himself.
Sure. My name is Peter Cordy, and I was previously a young Earth creationist. Past few months, I've given it a lot more consideration, and I really stepped away from the entire debate because all the debate really does is gives you a team mentality where your team has to be right, the other team has to be wrong, and I just took a sideline, took a seat, and just kind of spectated for a while. And I just honestly, I don't see how the this whole universe is 6,000 years old. It's just if you look at it, you just know it's not. It has to be what 4.6 billion years old. It cannot be 6,000 years old. That's ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd. Can God have made it 6,000 years? Okay, he could have. Look like he did, so why would he lie to us? You know, like Wayne, you always talk about the book of scripture and the book of nature. Uh, the book of nature would be lying if the Earth was 6,000 years old. Now, I don't believe in macroevolution at this point, although I'm still giving that a lot of consideration. But as for an old Earth, I would absolutely get on that bandwagon.
Bam, there you have it. From what's the saying? From the golden calf itself or something like that. I know I just butchered that saying, but if you guys don't know, Peter Cordy actually debated General and I last summer on the Vigilant Christians YouTube channel. So last year, Peter, you were a younger creationist, and you were actually Kent's debate partner. So you guys can actually
Right.
go and you can look up that video on the Vigilant Christian Mario's channel. If you type in Kent Hovind Vigilant Christian, it should pop up. And the thumbnail of the video will actually be the geologic column. And you know what, Pete? That was a point I touched on in our debate. I say God has given us two books. He's given us the book of Scripture and the book of Nature, and we're to test the two to see if they corroborate. And so I'm happy you looked into that point, and I'm happy you stepped out of younger creationism. So I'm basically having a coming out party for you right now, because I know exactly how it feels, man. Because I came out of younger creationism about a year ago as well. So everybody is basically waking up, and there's a great awakening. And I'm not saying younger creationists aren't Christians, but the belief of young Earth creationism itself, obviously, it's not true.
Yeah, it just seems silly to me, to be honest with you.
So you can still believe in the Bible, you can still believe in Jesus, you can still be a Christian and like accept reality. There's nothing bad about accepting reality. I think it's very honest to accept the reality that you live in.
Yeah, I think that if you step away from it, like to any young Earth creationist out there, if you step away from it for a little while, take a few months off from the whole debate and just look at it and just look at the like go outside at night, look at the stars, look at all that and look at how they glorify God, number one, but also look and say that does not look like it's 6,000 years old. It just it's not feasible.
Well, you know that what's funny is I did somewhat of what you said, so I didn't like look at the stars, or whatever. I had like a revelation, like, oh my gosh, like it has to be older because it looks older. It For me it was I remember I don't know the exact date, but I can give you a time frame. This was around February of last year, and I was looking at some videos talking about cosmology because I had just gotten done with debating Steve McRae on evolution. And so he actually was able to change my mind on what macroevolution is. And so I said, you know what? I'll accept macroevolution, but I still don't see how you can conflate macroevolution with common descent. And so I went and I had a whole PowerPoint presentation that I was basically passing around to other Christians and saying, oh, this is a PowerPoint I made. Maybe like this would be a good way of talking to somebody who accepts evolution, witnessing to an evolutionist. And I was just about to make another PowerPoint on the Big Bang, and it was going to have some of my critiques of why I didn't believe it at that point. So I went to go do my research on YouTube, and there was a creationist YouTube channel called, I think it's called the Northeast Creationist, or the
Oh
Northeast
yeah,
Creation Institute or something like that. It's like
network, I
Northeast,
believe.
yeah, network, Northeast Creation Network or something like that. And they have a video, and it's still on there. Some guy was going through the different younger models of cosmology, and as a young Earth cosmologist, he actually was explaining why each one didn't work, and he got down to like the final one, and then he said, "Oh yeah, this one doesn't work either, but we really do need creationists in the field so they can prove that younger creationism doesn't have a problem with time and starlight and etc. Because we do have a real problem there." And that night, I got done watching the video. I went on Answering Genesis. I went on like creation.com and all these different websites. And I said, if these models don't work, why are they offering these models as solutions? Obviously, maybe these models don't work because younger creationism just isn't true. And that night, I said, yeah, this is dumb. I can't believe this anymore. I'm going about my life, and like the universe is a lot older than 6,000 years old. And then that's where my journey began. So then I became an older creationist. I could tell you, I was an older creationist, and then I wasn't willing to accept the gap theory, but I thought there was some truth to it. And then I accepted Gerald Schroeder's model. His model posits that the universe is old, but at the same time is young. So it wouldn't be an appearance to age model. His model was due to hyperinflation, everything everything basically aged very rapidly, and then it slowed down. And so during the first couple of seconds of the expansion event, everything aged to be about billions of years in a few seconds, or in a matter of 6 24-hour days. There you go. So it took 6 days of this hyperinflationary period for everything to at least um, get to be billions of years old. And then I changed my mind when I accepted evolution because, of course, um, with Earth history, we can actually track how old something is when we use our models. And so I said, obviously, like evolution has a very well thought out time scale, and it actually makes more sense of Big Bang cosmology. So I actually used the two to come to a better consensus, and I changed my opinion. Um, as a matter of fact, my conversion from old Earth creationism to theistic evolution is on my channel. I think it's called Theistic Evolution to be considered and not scoffed at, or something like that. And on that day, when I made that video, I changed my mind. And ever since, I have been an evolutionary creationist, and don't regret it. And it hasn't, in any way, shape, or form, shaken my faith. It's actually made my faith stronger. And I think I've gotten better arguments because of it. Because I always used to argue from like a younger perspective or whatever. And now, I don't really see the age of the earth or evolution or anything as a big issue or whatever. I mean, it can be used as like a common ground between Christians and atheists, or Christians or unbelievers. But there are also some good arguments that Christians can use in favor of God's existence, uh, using evolution and Big Bang cosmology. So I think Christians
Absolutely.
should keep that in mind too.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Like with teleology of like the natural world, and then you have the cosmological arguments, which really, for the most part, really only work in a Big Bang model. So it's, and if you look at it, young Earth creationism is very similar philosophically to atheism, because what a young Earth creationist is going to do is not really going to argue that there's evidence for young Earth creationism, but that young Earth creationism is still possible. So if you look at the starlight problem, right, they're going to say,
mhm.
oh, it's still possible given certain crazy circumstances that we don't know, we can't prove, but it's possible And atheists will do the same thing. Say, well, it is possible, like infinitely, like you can't even imagine it being possible, but there's a little percentage in there that it could have happened this way, and it's just you not even shouldn't even look at it, you know?
Yeah, younger creationism and atheism in my mind, I do see them as very similar, almost like cousins.
Right,
Um, because it's no wonder that a lot of younger creationists, when they find out that younger creationism isn't true, they become atheists.
right.
Um, but I would say they're similar in the sense that the younger creationists are actually um, intimidated, or at least they don't have very good answers for why we see what we see. Their answers are very um, cheap,
Dogmatic.
dogmatic, and lazy. In the
Uh-huh.
same sense that some of the atheist explanations and their arguments for why we see what we see are very cheap, dogmatic, and philosophically lazy. Um,
Absolutely.
that's a phrase I use all the time. I think atheism itself is philosophically lazy, because instead of going with um, or at least trying to find out the best philosophical answer for why we see what we see, atheists just say, well, the universe is here, so it's no surprise that we exist among all these great, odds. Um, or I'm thinking of the philosopher. I think his name was John Wesley or somebody like that. Who he basically, General. You may know who I'm talking about. Hey, General. Thanks for studying. You can unmute if you want. I mean, you don't have to, but if you want to, you can unmute.
Hey guys, just I think
Hey,
my internet's a bit slow. I'm just wondering, am I breaking up?
no, you're fine. General, is it was it
Nice
was
to
it
meet you.
again?
Nice to see you.
You still there?
What's happening here?
I have no idea, but this is Peter's coming out party. So Peter has finally renounced younger creationism, and I'm basically giving him some support.
Nice, but
So there you go.
I wish Google Hangout
Um,
still had the sound effects so you could play some celebration music.
but was it John Wesley, General, the guy who made the? You know what I'm talking about, General. All the stuff about philosophy. You know this example where there's a guy who's about to get shot by a firing squad, and the firing squad finally tries to execute him, but he survives. And then the guy looks
Richard
around and he
Swinburne.
says, "Yes." And he says, "Of course I'm still alive. It should be no I mean, it should be no surprise that I'm still standing here." But he hasn't really explained anything. He just stated the obvious. So that's what I'm saying. That's my point when it comes to atheism. They don't try to explain the miraculous probabilities and uh, what's the word? Thin razor's edge of a probability of why we exist. They basically are doing exactly what that guy did. They're restating the obvious. Well, of course, like the universe exists among all these really slim probabilities.
Yep. Because it does. If it does, then it does. But
Yes.
why?
Why? Well, you can't really ask why. That's not a question that I guess they're really concerned with answering. But I think they should. And so in those regards, I think younger creationism and atheism are both philosophically weak. Um, but the good thing is there are alternatives. You don't have to be an atheist. You don't have to be a younger creationist. I think it's a lot better to and you don't honestly you don't have to be a Christian to have a very good explanation of the universe. I think pantheism. I think they've got a good explanation for things. But I don't think because I'm Christian, I don't think it's the big picture. But yeah, like pantheism, I think they have a very good explanation for why the universe is the way it is. But with you coming out of younger creationism too, I want to ask, so you haven't been shunned or anything yet? You haven't been like an outcast so far?
I actually haven't told anyone, so
Well, you have now.
yeah.
Peter, I'm interested. Lay out for me, if you can, briefly, what started your doubt, and
Well, what
yeah,
happened
go ahead.
was I got out of the whole like groupthink mentality, where it's one side against another, and I was on the young Earth creationist side. So there was just no way, it's like Jets versus Giants, to use a American football example. There's no way the other team's gonna win, whatever. And, you know, I stepped away from it for a while, for a few months. And I just looked at it. I didn't get into the details, into the science, but I just looked at it from a reasonable perspective. And I just spent a lot of time stargazing and praying. And I just realized, honestly, there's just no way. There's no way this is 6,000 years old. Absolutely not. That's silly. It's so unlikely. Sure, it's like slimly possible, like, but it's just not how it is. If you give me some hard proof for it, then sure. But at this point, I'm not believing that. That's just, in my opinion, rubbish. Now, I mean, evolution. I'm not an evolutionist, but when it comes to the age of the Earth, no, I have almost no doubt in my mind.
Yeah,
Well, praise
that's
God.
very interesting. I like. In fact, I never really heard of uh, the groupthink analogy used before. Um, when other younger Christians have come out.
That's
Um,
really how it is.
and yeah, no, that I think that's probably the most simplest
Well,
and most precise way of putting it.
I
Um,
go even as far as to say that younger creationism is a cult. Um,
that's that's being very blunt. That's a more Peter gave it more, like a softer
no,
version of that.
no,
But
younger
yeah,
creationism is definitely a cult. I got kicked out of my younger creationist group because I went against the statement of faith, and the statement of faith said that no matter what the evidence says or how much evidence there is on the table, you can't change your mind because it goes against the core values and tenets of your Christian worldview. And I'll show you guys my statement of faith right now. Hold on. It was, I'm looking for it in my files. There you go. I'm not sure if I've shown this email before, but this is the email that I was sent when I was kicked out of my group. And I was labeled a heretic without them calling me a heretic. Most definitely, I did have a backlash of people on Facebook who I was Facebook friends with, who were like, "Oh, like, you're a complete heretic," and like they put me up there with Joel Osteen because I don't think that the universe is 6,000 years old. I'm Joel Osteen now. Hold on, and I'm sharing my screen now. You guys see my screen? Hello?
Oh, I see it now.
It says, Dear Mr. Wayne Fillmore, we regret to inform you that as of the 16th of February 2016, so I did say around like February, that's when I started changing my position, that as of the 16th of February 2016, your membership in the Creation Science Alliance has been suspended, and it's still suspended till this day. Um, your membership suspension is due to the following reasons. The realization that a member holds to beliefs that are contrary to sound doctrine and dependable science. Young Earth creationism is sound doctrine and dependable science, of which clearly violates the agreed to statement of faith for our community. 1A details member adheres to an old Earth theory. 1B decision Such a theory is inconsistent with the biblical standards set out for our community. They have biblical standards for their community. Like, this is wild. No action is required at the time. Blah 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 blah.
I was actually part of that same group.
Did they suspend your membership too?
It was like a brief thing though, because like they just like kept calling me and calling me, and then I just stopped picking up. So I really don't know what that was about. Because like
Oh,
I don't know, the phone calls you'd have to scream to get them to hear you, and like nothing they said would be right. It was just so weird. So I don't know.
well, yeah, I guess it's basically just a network of people who adhere to creation science, and they have like people. I guess it's almost like it's like a club, right? Where if you're in one of the cities or something like that, right? And you're like, oh, like I'm in I don't know, I'm in Jersey, and there's somebody in the Creation Science Alliance group. I'm going to ask if I can like maybe like stop by their place or maybe like have a place for a night. It was like that. But, I mean, almost like a brotherhood in the sense.
Like a cult.
Yeah, it's like a cult.
Yeah.
Because us younger creationists, we gotta stick together.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a huge problem with like young Earth creationists because I think that they're faithful and they're like usually pretty good in practicing Christians and whatnot. But I mean, if they get like to the point where anyone who's not young Earth creationist is a heretic going to hell, that's a problem. That's a huge problem. Um,
Yeah.
that's the line right there.
I think younger creationism hurts the church more than atheism. I mean, there in the Google community alone. I mean, there are so many atheists who are like, yeah, like I used to be younger Christian. Paul Gia, I had a talk with him a couple weeks ago. Pete, you can look at our conversation we had. And Paul Gia, he's a former younger Christian, and it says the title of it is "Ken Ham Made Me Lose My Faith."
Honestly, like Ken Ham is really stupid. Even when I was a young Earth creationist, I'm like, right, this guy's not doing his job right at all.
Well, there's some younger Christians who don't like Ken Hovind, and they're
That
like,
is
yeah,
true.
Ken Hovind stuff is like the worst of the worst. I thought he was pretty good, but I started to notice, and I always used to say this to Steve. I was like, Steve, this man, he would be a very good salesman. You know why? Because he is a salesman. Duh.
Yep. But I mean, that's what kind of like all evangelism is in a way. It's almost like salesmanship, trying to sell your idea to other people, get them to agree with you.
Well, Kent Hovind takes the prize because he has so many Hovindites around the world. It's crazy. I mean, somebody gave him a free trailer.
That is true.
I mean, his followers are dedicated to him. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if like he was able to Jim Jones these people.
I feel like he would have that capability because his followers are very loyal. I mean, I still think he's like a good guy and all that kind of stuff. I don't think he's a bad
Oh
person.
boy, do you see my last interview or my last two videos on him?
I did not.
Well, you get some time. Check out my last interview. Jenna and I actually did an interview with it's a woman named Deborah. She's a Christian, and she actually spent it was about 2 weeks on Kent Hovind's compound, and then what happened was she didn't leave. They told her to get out basically because she was waking up, and there were some things going around on the compound that just were not of God. One thing in particular, and General here as my witness, and I have the recording on my YouTube channel. Um, she was having marital problems, and she goes to Kent Hovind and his new wife, and what she said is, um, Kent told her, uh, he said, oh, because she was in Kent's trailer, talking to Kent and his wife, and Kent told her that he said, well, if you're having problems with your husband, just get naked for him. That'll fix everything. And then his wife, who was in the trailer with him, started giggling. after Kent said this, and like he's supposed to be like this old so godly man of God and going around preaching and teaching and stuff like that, and he's telling this woman, if you want to fix your marital problems, just get naked for your husband. That'll fix everything.
That's a bit problematic.
You think?
That's a bit. That's wow.
So that lets you know where his mind is at.
I guess in the gutter. That's
In the gutter.
that.
and,
I can't even
and
imagine that.
I couldn't imagine him even saying something like that, but it's possible. You don't really know somebody until you know somebody.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
And she said she was going to pack up her things, but before she did, Kent offered to bribe her. He offered to give her $200 if she left quietly and didn't say anything to the cult members, because
Cat.
then they would start waking up too. Yeah, yeah. And you know, they did. Kent and his wife did an interview in response to the interview General and I did, and the other interview, um, this guy named Bill is interviewing Kent and his wife, and Kent made some reluctant admissions. He said, "Well, yes, I did do such and such, but it didn't happen this way. Yes, I did do such and such, but not the way she said it." And what he did admit to was the fact that he actually did give somebody money before she came, because she said when she first came onto the compound, there was a guy who he got basically bribed to leave. And Kent said, "Oh yeah, we did give him $4,000, but that was for an operation for him to get when he got back to England." How believable that is? Not very believable. Somebody came from England so they could come all the way over to hot soaking Alabama to help you build up your Dinosaur Adventureland theme park, uh, as basically a laborer. Doesn't
I don't know.
doesn't sound believable.
His followers are very, 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 very dedicated.
They're more dedicated to Kent Hovind than Jesus. I mean, and
Oh
that's
yeah,
the truth. I mean,
absolutely.
let me be honest. I used to listen to Kent Hovind probably about like on a daily, probably like 3 times a week, maybe. And I wouldn't fall asleep to his stuff, but I would definitely listen to his stuff before I went to bed, so I could recite like some of his stuff like the back of my hand. I mean, all
I
the way
was
down to
watching
the
it
jokes.
every night. Oh yeah, I started telling his jokes and everything. It was great. I mean, I became Kent Hovind. Like it was funny.
We all were Kent Hovind. We need to make that into a hashtag. Like, hi.
Hey guys, sorry I had to go answer the front door, so apologize for if you ask me if anything.
It's cool, Jenner. We all know your uranium came in the mail.
No, I was just what I was going to tell Peter earlier was when he mentioned about the stargazing, like were you doing something as simple as maybe late evening, like on a clear night sky, you just look up at the stars maybe for like, I don't know, half an hour or something, and you just contemplate the vastness of everything. Was that what's going through your mind?
Yep, that I'm just thinking about how the heavens declare God's glory, and just thinking about the whole book of nature and book of scripture, and thinking they're not going to contradict, and this does not look 6,000 years old at all. Like that's just in the cosmological realm, nothing. I mean, billions of years is, in my opinion, and it's not just my opinion, but I mean, statistically, still extremely quick for all of what we see to be the way it is. So,
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's really commendable. Like, um, it's all the more it's testament to the glory and the eternal nature of God Himself. That
right.
6,000-year-old universe would be too tiny for someone as big as God. So
Yeah. It's just,
it's really cool.
I mean, it's possible. I wouldn't say it's impossible, because I mean, God
Yeah.
can do anything. But you got to think, there's things He can do and there's things He will do. And the young Earth creationist will argue that God physically could do this. It could have happened this way, and therefore it did happen. But I
Well,
just don't. I don't see the evidence for that.
Right.
I think it's better to not even go into like any form of investigation with God definitely did do it this way. Now let's prove it. I think you should just let the evidence speak for itself, like I was doing when I was investigating. So I did something similar to you in general, and Steve McRae. They can testify of this. I actually blocked Steve McRae. I don't know if I blocked General, but I definitely did. I blocked Steve for a while, for a couple of days when I was going through like my investigation, and I just took a step back from everything, like you did. Didn't talk to anybody, and I actually had to retrain how I thought about things because all I knew was this presuppositional stuff in answering Genesis. Oh, there's historical science, observational science, and blah 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 blah. So I had to actually learn like how people really do conduct investigations. So I used J. Warner Wallace's methodology because he's a former detective. You know who J. Warner Wallace is, right, Pete?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, cold case Christianity.
Yeah. Yep. And so I used some of his methodology. I think some of his arguments for God's existence are pretty crappy, but his methodology is solid. And so I was actually going through using circumstantial evidence, direct evidence, stuff like that, built in a case. And when I was done, the ultimate like what's the word the nail in the coffin for me was human chromosome 2 because that's a testable falsifiable prediction that scientists made about human evolution. And that was if you go back in the debate, that's something I had basically poured out. But we didn't really even touch on that. But the way that chromosome, the way the chromosome fusion is observed, like when we see it, um, just just for the sheer fact that there is a fusion event where scientists predicted it would be, testifies that evolution is true.
Yeah, I would say that that right there is the one and only thing that um, gives me a second thought about macroevolution. That's it right there. If I'm thinking about the arguments and all that kind of stuff, everything else is kind of like all right, whatever. But that one there is like a little all right. That has some pull to it. But there's a lot of
Uh,
other stuff for the other way too. So I'm not
which
really convinced.
which specifically that you're referring to in evolution?
The
What did we?
the fusion of what is it, chromosome number 2?
Yeah, human
Oh,
chromosome
okay,
2. Yep.
okay.
Yeah, and that definitely made me take a step back because the creationists didn't have any good explanations for why there. Like I know Hugh Ross says, well, after the flood, our chromosomes bottleneck. But why? I never heard a good explanation for that. Fazell Rana, uh, he wrote an article, and I think I told you the day after I read that article Fazell Rana had posted, that's when I had my hangout with General because now it wasn't the science that was holding me back. It was the theology. And I said, well, how theologically, how does this fit
Mm.
in with the Bible? And I had asked General some questions theologically. But Fazell Rana actually wrote an article. You know Fuzz, right? He works for RTB, the biochemist.
I'm not sure.
You can look his work up, but he actually has written an article on HC2, and what he said basically was nothing. And in the same sense, where younger creationists, you know how younger creationists special plead, and any other case or fact of life, we would accept the evidence for what it is. Well, it takes, you know, 13, billion years to get to this specific star. I think the oldest star is 13.2 billion years old. It takes about 13.2 billion years for that light to travel from the star uh, to our planet and back. So that star, therefore, must be 13.2 billion years old. But in the younger creationist case, they have to say, well, maybe God did, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's not the case. So they were using God as a way to special plead. And Fazal Rana was doing that with human chromosome too. And
Yeah,
he even admits, he says,
that's what I've
he says,
noticed about.
he said, I can see why evolutionists definitely do see this as fitting into their model, but it could just be that God designed it that way, like an engineer. And that was his answer. And that was so philosophically lacking.
Honestly,
Because I that oh sorry, go ahead, Peter.
oh no, you can go.
Now, because my model, obviously, there's the science, which I know Fazal Rana. Fazal Rana has admitted that in university he held to a form of theistic evolution. It's just that he then, for some reason, is now bought himself into this an equivalent of a young Earth creationist argument for human origins. And when you actually look at evolution as understood also in a very primitive form, but understood in the early church in regards to how Jesus, the whole function of his incarnation, his atonement, the glorification of the body, and not just that, but the cosmos that's joined to him on the cross. Evolution as a mechanism is perfect for that theological model. People like Fazal Rana and so on, they haven't actually thought about it deeply. It's a good apologetic tool, to preach the gospel, and that's my use of it.
Well, I actually have to go now, but I did
Yeah,
want to
no
make
worries, Peter. Yeah.
I did want to make one correction because I feel like an idiot right now. I had a slip of the tongue. Earlier, I said that the universe was like 4.6 billion years old. It's like, I know it's over 13 billion. I'm stupid. Sorry. So,
that's. It
yeah.
depends on what universe you talk about. If the Earth is the universe, then that's fine. Yeah.
All right. Well, I will talk to you guys soon.
All right, see.
No worries. God bless, Peter.
God bless.